Okay, and so in this unit I want to talk about Kantianism. But Kantianism is a sort of moral theory, a sort of member of a family of theories in the same way that utilitarianism is a member of a family of theories. And Kantianism is the main one of these we're going to talk about. We'll focus on it, we'll spend the most time on it. And in contemporary philosophy, Kantianism is hands down the most important rules-based theory in the same way that, utilitarianism is the most important consequentialist theory. And a rules-based theory is just a theory that bases moral judgments and moral reasoning on rules, right? Kantianism is the most important form of such a theory in contemporary philosophy, but there are others. And we're going to begin by talking about a couple others and seeing some problems they run into, because I think this will help us understand what's going on in Kantianism, why Kant does and says some of the things he does. But I think it'll also help us to see just the general problems a rules-based theory faces, the challenges they need to meet to be successful. Now, I think Kant does a pretty good job meeting these challenges, maybe not perfect, but quite good. But, I think we're going to look at some theories that don't do quite so well, rules-based theories, to see what they are and why they're important and how and why Kant needs to meet them. Okay. So before doing that, I think we should just say a little bit about why a rules-based theory might be attractive. And there are a few reasons for this. For one thing, I think this is a common way of thinking about morality, a way of explaining our moral judgments and choices, and also, a way that we reason about morality, right? Why is this wrong? Why is it wrong to steal? We might say, well, stealing is wrong, right? You shouldn't take something from somebody else's car when it's unlocked because stealing is wrong. Why is it wrong to plagiarize an assignment and turn it in? Well, because that is a form, you're trying to deceive your professor. That's a form of lying. Lying is wrong, right? Now, there's a lot more to be said for this, but, I do think this is a pretty natural way that we reason about things, right? It's a way if you have children, or if you remember being a kid, it's a way that we teach children morality, right? You don't do this because this is wrong. Now, you might already be thinking, well, if this is a way we teach children, it seems pretty simplistic. There needs to be more to it than just, well, these are the rules. And I think you're right. That's a point I'll come to. I think more importantly, though, is that some things do seem to be wrong no matter what. Now, we ultimately might not agree with that, but I think most of us have that thought, right? And, we'll talk about this case a bit more. We'll actually read the essay where she brings up this case. But Elizabeth Anscombe has a really good example of this. I mean, it's terrible, it's awful, but it's memorable, and I think most people would agree, right? Elizabeth Anscombe says, well, look, if someone says to you, is it wrong to boil a child alive? You are not going to say, well, usually 99% of the time, 99.99% of the time, but you got to look at the consequences and, well, maybe not all the time, right? If someone asks you if it's morally okay to boil a child alive, your response should be, good God, no. Why are you asking, right? You are probably, I can't see your faces, one of the disadvantages of an online class, but you are probably sitting at home just completely shocked and maybe a bit offended that I even used the example, right? Which is the point, right? This is not something that, decent people seem like they should debate about. This is just something you should say, no, this is wrong, no matter what. And, when I have in-person classes, if somebody's like, well, I don't know, generally yes, but, people aren't just like, oh, that guy's a character. He has some interesting views. They're like, good God, who is this person, right? But a utilitarian, any kind of consequentialist, does seem to be stuck saying, well, usually yes, almost always, maybe always in the real world, but we have to think about the consequences. There could be cases. And that seems bad, right? Rules-based theories that just say, no, you do not boil a child alive no matter what, they seem to be on much firmer ground than the utilitarian with his, well, usually not, but response, right? You can think of other cases of this. I'm just stealing Anscombe's because I think it's a darn good one, and also because, well, we'll be talking about it a bit later. Rules-based theories do seem to be better able to account for that idea that some things are wrong no matter what than does a consequentialist theory. But I think there are two general problems that rules-based theories encounter. And this is not to say that these are going to sink the theories, but these are questions that a rules-based theory needs to answer, and it needs to answer well. For one, how do we know the rules, right? How do we know what the moral rules are? How do we sort out bad or stupid moral rules from good ones, right? If you lived in Germany at a certain time and you were a child, you might get the principle jammed into your head that you should always do what the Führer says. When he's not there or his representatives aren't there, you should try to do what you think he would want you to do. Well, that's a supposed moral rule. It's a pretty awful one, right? How do we sort out legitimate moral rules like don't boil a child alive, don't murder other human beings, from really stupid ones like try to always do what would make the Führer happy, right? We just probably know, if you're sitting there listening to this, of course, one set of moral rules are good, one's stupid, but how do we sort them out in cases where it's not so clear, right? And how do we come up with moral rules for unfamiliar cases? Or how do we apply the rules? We need to know what the rules are, how to apply them. Our rules-based theory should tell us something about that. Two hooks in with one. These are different but related questions, and I think the way we answer two and the way we answer one are going to really relate to each other. They're going to, dovetail, as you might say, expression I like, if you've ever seen, know anything about carpentry, dovetail joint, like two dual joints that just fit together. Anyway, they're going to dovetail, I think, fit up together nicely if they're good answers, but we also need to know why the rules are important. You tell me I should or shouldn't do this thing no matter what, even if it has terrible consequences, maybe terrible consequences for me, maybe terrible consequences for others. Well, why not? I need an answer. I need an account. What account can you give me? Now, the first rules-based theory we're going to look at is divine command theory. And divine command theory is one natural way to think about moral rules. In fact, I'm going to guess that it's the way that a lot of people who are attracted to a rules-based theory do think about the moral rules. And what a divine command theory says was, okay, what are the moral rules? Moral rules are set by God. In the same way that, the owner of a restaurant might set the rules for his restaurant. You got to wear a coat. You got to wear shoes. you need a reservation, or in the same way that Congress gets together and sets the laws for our country, God sets the moral rules that we all have to follow. So, divine command theory will say right actions are commanded by God. Right things, something being right means that God has commanded us to do it. Wrong means God has forbidden it. Now, divine command theory has some problems. I count myself as a religious person. I don't like divine command theory in its purest form. Now, why not? What are its problems? Well, we're going to have to refer back to these two questions for rules-based theory. The problems with divine command theory mainly come back to it does not, at least in a lot of forms, seem like it can answer either of these questions very well. Now, Socrates and Euthyphro, when we get to the Euthyphro, they don't put this as clearly as I would like. But I think this is what Socrates is ultimately getting at when he's pushing Euthyphro on this. So, how do we know what the rules are? Why are they important? For reasons we'll get to very soon, I think divine command theory is going to have a very hard time giving any kind of good answer to these questions. We'll talk about that next time. We'll have to do a little translating with the Euthyphro to see what the problem is, but trust me, there is a problem that will pop up very clearly when we dig more into the Euthyphro.